Hi, I'm Jennifer England, here on the traditional territories of the Kwanlundun First Nation and the Taan Quachan Council in Whitehorse, Yukon, and I am your host of Weave. My next guest is Michèle Audette, who is the Senior Advisor for Reconciliation and Indigenous Education for L'Université Laval in Quebec. She is well known for her work as the former Commissioner for the Missing and Murdered Indigenous Women and Girls Inquiry in Canada, which took place over 33 months between 2016 and 2019. She is a former Deputy Minister of the Status of Women for the Quebec provincial government, as well as the former president of the Native Women's Association of Canada and Femmes Autochtones de Quebec. She is also a mom of 5 and a grandmother. And I'm delighted to introduce her and to share some highlights of our conversation that if you're a follower of social action, I think you'll appreciate. We talk about what inspired her in her early life to stand up against policies and legislation and also lateral violence that were designed to eradicate her and her identity in multiple ways. We also explore the most important work ahead in bridging divides in a country that still is colonized in and through society. We also explore her greatest learnings as a commissioner of one of the most profound justice journeys in our country to date, and also what she relied on as her significant source of strength in order to sustain and nurture herself through that significant professional and personal stretch. We also touch on the one line we must remove from all social action lexicon if we're going to be effective in creating change. And then finally, what dreams are guiding her as she embarks upon the next chapter of her contributions. So dive in, grab a tea, enjoy this beautiful conversation with one of Canada's most incredible Indigenous leaders, and send me a note to tell me what you think. Thank you. Okay, Michèle, hello, welcome to Weave. It's so good to have you.
Merci, thank you. Long time no see.
I feel like the first time I met you, I remember your smile lit up the room, and it is lighting this space up again. So I'm so grateful to be in your company.
Oh, merci, thank you.
So I'm so excited for this chance to have a conversation with you on Weave, and really wanting to lean into your ways of knowing and seeing the world from your perspective, particularly around social change and leadership, and what you've been learning throughout the decades of your contributions. So we're going to kind of just dance and see where this conversation takes us. But maybe could you begin with, where did you grow up?
Apparently, I grew up dans l'univers.
L'univers.
Oh, yeah, we were apparently little stars. And I would choose my dad, Gilles, and choose my mom, Evelyn. And my dad is Québécois, my mom is Innu. And I almost took, how do we say, I just almost arrived on a train. I was inside of my mom's belly and I said, that's it, July 20th, 1971, it's right now. I want to come on Earth. But no, I wasn't born on a train. When we came back to that same train the next day, because in Labrador, the closest hospital was there, I came back to that wagon where they used to call it the wagon for savages, and the other side is for the white people. Mm-hmm. So this is where I grew up the first days of my life, and then after that, knowing that later it was a legislation that couldn't allow me to live inside the community. So I grew up beside my community's mom in Schefferville. Mm-hmm. So back and forth after that, Sept-Îles and Montreal, back and forth. And it was a mix of Innu culture, Innu beauty and amazing stuff, but also with hard stuff, and the Québécois. in Montreal.
Wow. Yeah. So from little stars to this really profound, it feels like a big block between your culture with the laws of the day that prevented this more full life on Innu land.
Mm-hmm.
How did you navigate that as a young child and as a teenager?
As a young child, I had no clue that Canada puts for so many years since the beginning, I guess, of this country to put in place policies and even harder legislation to make sure that I do not exist anymore, that I blend to the Canadian society. And I didn't know that time. I didn't know that I wasn't allowed to speak my language. I I I was part of a system where we would create the RCMP. The roots and the history of the RCMP was that we will make that institute, that we will create that police force to remove the Indigenous kids from their territory. It didn't happen to me, merci, but to all my family on the Innu side, it did. And not knowing also that because my mom will marry the most beautiful Québécois, she will be kicked out from her community. Mm-hmm. And the same people from her nation would say, get out, you marry out. So it's not only a, how do you say, une violence institutionnelle or a violence that comes from an institution or a country, but it creates also a lateral violence among us. So this is why I couldn't live inside. But the strength of my grandmother and grandfather, who spoke only Innu with me, or most of the time Innu, this is why I understand Innu. Merci, thank you. And my parents, I don't know, I have good memories. We go hunting, fishing, we go at the camp, we go inside a tent, we do skidoo or caribou hunting. It's amazing. But for my parents on my mom's side, it's a normal life. Mm-hmm. It's who we are. Mm-hmm. It's later I realized, I said, oof, I'm glad they were able towards or against a colonial system. They made sure that my first time of life on earth, I have that teaching from my grandparents and my community. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So what was it for the courage to have that resistance, in a way, the resistance to some of the rules, and both outside the community and also from sometimes inside the community? What was their resistance? I mean, it would take some resistance and creativity maybe to be able to offer that life, do you find?
I don't know, coming from my mom or my dad. Mm-hmm. That time I didn't really know. But one thing I understood over the years when my mom shared to me what the system did on her, or the community, or the religion, or the residential school, and how she empowered herself to, no, I'm allowed to live and not survive, and taking back my place and my power and my culture. This is what I see when I'm young. A woman who will create a movement or be part of a movement, and defending when she did, her and my dad divorced, she came back to the community. And that time it sounded like it was still fun. We couldn't have a house. I didn't know that. Now I'm 6, 7, 8, 9 years old, 11 years old. That all those years that I'm mentioning. We live in a tent during the summer. During winter, we live in basement or shack where we put the stuff for gardening. You know, those little space
garden tents. Yeah.
that became like a little shack for us with a stove and a little fridge. I thought it was just fun. But I didn't know it was a legislation that prohibited my mom to have a house.
Yeah.
And then she bought a house, but not under her name, the name of her boyfriend. And this is where I realized now I'm 11 years old. I get spit on, pushed, yelled at. They would throw some liquids, or, they have a pop and do the young adult. And I'm so scared, or I would be yelled at, or a moment it was so threatened. I'm 17 years old. The person will break a bottle of Coca-Cola or 7-Up, but it was dark, so probably Coca-Cola. And putting there and saying, "You're white, you better leave this community." And I'm like pretending I'm not afraid, but inside I'm shaking, and I'm like, I couldn't speak. I'm speechless. So I had to use the system. Mm-hmm. Calling a lawyer, said, it's not normal. Mm-hmm. It's when I was 21, 24 years old. I was still going to my community, but with lots of fears. Mm-hmm. So when I was 24, that same man who threatened me many years ago, I was able to look at him in the eyes and to say, "Arrête. Mm-hmm. Enough. I will not tolerate anymore your behavior or mm-hmm. your action." Mm-hmm. But it's there and more example like this that put me in a position where I was ashamed because of what we were taught in the school in general, Quebec, Montreal, or in the community. I was ashamed also because we were the result of the residential school era and the Indian Act and the lateral violence. And then later I said, I don't have to choose. Am I Innu or Quebecoise? I'm who I am. I have to honor those two cultures. The little star, I'm the one who chose my parents, so I have to live with it, I was telling myself. But it was a tough moment because on one side, some of your own people is totally violent physically. Mm-hmm. And on the other side, it's coming to be, oh my God, are you a real Indian? Mm-hmm. And I'm like, Indian? No, Innu. So mm-hmm. it's many little stories like this during we decided, no, we have to stand up. Nobody will do. I have to do it. So it was that 5 cents every day, making sure that I survive or I honor at the same time.
Yeah, beautiful. So you chose, it just sounds like this incredible, these mini divides and exclusion, exclusion that can be experienced from the inside, exclusion that's happening on the outside. And yet there was this really, what strikes me is your just profound trust and strength in being who you were and rooted in two cultures, mm-hmm. and trusting the story that brought you there. And also that your political activism, social activism, was born at such a young age, with your ability to witness and be sensitive to what your mom went through in particular and its impact on you and your family.
Yeah. So when people ask, where did you learn that, or when did it happen? I used to say it happened late when I was in my 20s. Not long ago, my mom told me it happened when you were in my belly. And I carry what happened to my mom and my grandmothers and da 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 da. And I'm like, okay, wait. But it happened also the day that you decided to come. You were supposed to come in 2 weeks, later. But why on that train? Mm-hmm. She said, you're doing this national inquiry for the women who disappeared, the girls who disappeared or got murdered. You're doing this, Michèle. And it's tough to see how violent people can be towards you. But at the same time, you ask for that to shake a country. I said, I asked for it to be attacked. She said, no. But you asked to shake a country. I said, okay, explain. Well, you stop an entire train. You could have come the day before or the day after. You decided that hundreds of people will wait. You're coming. I said, I never saw that, or I didn't never think about that. And she said, my first reaction was, oh, this one probably will shake something one day. And now I see why. She said, what you're doing, the purpose started the moment you arrived.
Wow.
And that for me was like, oh my, speechless, parce que c'était beau, like, it was beautiful. And what
beautiful story. And you have shaken the country, and I want to move to that in a little bit, but I want to first ask you a little bit about this experience of building bridges across divides, and what you have always been so gifted at is, and I've seen you in so many different rooms with Indigenous elders and youth and leaders and fierce women and grandmothers, alongside white male politicians who and many of us non-Indigenous, public servants or activists. And your ability to listen and to really take in multiple perspectives and keeping this sort of openness has always, in my experience, been the model of how one bridges divides. How we bridge and work through the toughest sort of entrenched discrimination and start to shake it up and start to so I'm curious about this capacity of yours to bridge divides, and maybe whether you see that and where and how you began to practice the weaving together, the bridging and crossing divides in your, teenage and early 20s.
When did it start? I don't know. Thank you. It's beautiful what you're saying, by the way. It's very beautiful. And I take this as a gift. How it worked, I hope my dog is not outside.
Saba, that's okay. This is real life. These are real conversations.
What? I remember when I had my first son, Amun. I'm in Montreal. There is that guy from Picogan, Roger Wild. And I asked Roger, it seemed like we have a dream to connect nations together. So we organized with other Québécois and other people a bus, a peace bus. And inside that bus, I'm young now, half they're from Quebec, Québécois. The other half, they're coming from each nation. And we travel all summer in each communities to make that connection and that, "Hey, welcome to my territory," or "Why are you like this, you?" So they can be just honest among them, the teenagers and the youth, so they can know each other and continue a vision we had, which is bridging or connecting with the neighbors. And who are the neighbors? And it was, the name of our organization was Ashokan, which means bridge. So it was a passion already that time that I had to understand my own self. I was forced to decide which one, just one, or I was pushed to think that you have to make a choice.
Mm-hmm.
And when I told you it arrived in my 20s something, hey, whoa, la, it's a gift to have those two.
Mm-hmm.
So it started there when I was 20 years old with Roger and other people, Vincent, Rachel, Denis, etc. That let's dream and let's make that dream come true.
Mm-hmm.
And yesterday or couple days ago, I was in in Trois-Rivières during the Joyce Echaquan inquest, and I looked this woman outside, far from the place where the gathering is happening every day. We look each other. She was one of the participants,
Mm-hmm.
and she said, "This event changed my life." Then I saw another person at the university who is teaching. She said, "You don't recognize me, eh?" I said, "I do." And she said, "I'm here as an anthropologue là, teaching because of that bus experience."
Wow.
So, yeah, the dream of connecting people, I guess it started a long time ago.
Beautiful. And I love that reconnection, you know, the reconnection even 30 years later.
Yes.
That you're enjoying any as early as this week. That's fantastic.
Right.
And so from your perspective, I mean, what do you think is the greatest divide we need to face right now in our country?
There's too many. If I say one, I might put shadow to another so important. It's a tough question, so I'll go with my pair of moccasin of my portage where I've been walking for so many years. For me, would be we talk a lot about reconciliation. It's even in my title, in my position where I work, special advisor on reconciliation. But we do understand that we need to talk about recognition, reconnaître what happened in the past, and then to know, connaître what happened to the past. And then we can talk about a real reconciliation when we understand and recognize and not deny. That for me is very important. And very important also to understand that we're diverse, to understand that we are raising, or just upon that we are still alive. And despite that dark chapter of Canadian history, I want to make sure that people know also that we have amazing leaders, elected or not, natural or trained to. We have amazing person across Canada that are honoring that past, but also having that passion of what do we do today and tomorrow. So my big as a feminist or advocating for Indigenous women, there is one thing I've been advocating forever and ever since I'm young. I was asking my grandmother, my mom in Vietnam, why my name is Audette? Because your dad is Québécois. Ah, okay. Then why you're Régis or Saint-Onge or Picard? It's not new at all. To know about the history, the real history, not the one I was forced to think that we're savages, we're bad, we're eating the missionary, we're cutting the piece of the head, scalpé, blah, 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 all negative stuff when we never been taught that Quebec, it's an Innu word that means get off from your boat. And it's a way of showing the society that, my God, the Innu people were so awesome. Didn't know them in their huge boat. They said, Quebec, which means get off from your boat. And we will welcome you and tell you how to live on this land. So rewriting together the history is my top priority. The real one.
The real one. I never knew that word, that Innu word. Thank you.
Right.
Thank you so much for sharing that. I mean, it's just such a powerful, such a simple and powerful example of where, when we reclaim language and when I love what you said, rewriting history together, and that you can't do that without the reconnaître or the connaître, to remember and also to understand and to know.
Exactly.
Because right now, from my experience as a non-Indigenous Canadian, and for white folks who are reckoning with not only the context in Canada, but even beyond with Black Lives Matter, there is this reckoning that we have to do in order to open ourselves up to the true history. And as you and I've talked this week with the Kamloops Residential School, is not new for Indigenous peoples, yet it's a shock for non-Indigenous people in Canada. It can feel like a shock.
Right.
And so this, even that is a divide. It's a divide in even our own bodies. What is a shock for maybe me, because I've, have the blinders on. I don't understand the history. I don't appreciate the traditional territory from which the lands were stolen. If all that is unknown and unfelt in my body, in my family's experience, it can feel like a shock. And yet this is the divide. I was talking to someone today. It's not a shock to me. It's a shock maybe for you, and it's not for me. And to me, that's it feels like that's what you're saying. It's like that is the divide we have to cross.
Wait. But at the same time, Jennifer, it was like a punch in my stomach.
Yeah, sure.
A kind of shock.
Yes, of course.
Yeah, it was. I didn't know we created the RCMP to remove our children. I didn't know that. I learned that when I was commissioner for the inquiry. So there is some people that it's not a shock what they've heard or saw on the news about the 215 little spirit, because they told that 40 years ago, 60 years ago. Their words that was stories, and the stories today for me are the truth.
Yeah.
If we've listened to them, probably we would have found that long time ago.
Yeah.
But because I'm also in that generation of learning, because it was hidden to me also, and to the rest of Canada, that makes two of us very shocked. But not for my mom and other, because they knew. So it is our history. It's not only the Indigenous history, it's you and I and our ancestor. So from that, knowing that there is more, we have a responsibility now. What do we do for the other sites, or for the other stories that we didn't believe or we didn't really pay attention? I believe that we have a responsibility now. We cannot pretend.
Yeah, exactly. And it brings me to that, when we think about bridging the divides outside of ourselves, socially or culturally, it makes me think about the question, well, what is the divide we need to actually work with inside ourselves?
What do you mean?
I feel like when I inside create meaning, where you are over there, I am over here, I can understand that I can misperceive that we're not connected. I can go through my day with this lens, these glasses of me, not me, us, them, black, white, Indigenous, non-Indigenous, poor, rich, all these little ways we divide ourselves, all different ways. And yet it feels like a divide inside me when I don't allow myself to feel and be with and that's the separation. And I can tell when I do it just in my everyday life, when I make a separation from my kid or from my
yeah.
I don't agree with, or, all the ways we just keep ourselves separate. So it feels like there's also a divide we have to attend to in ourselves.
Why? It's something, I don't know. It's something that we or I cohabit or live with that without knowing or without realizing that it does play a lot for the explicit bias or the biais implicite ou explicite. But one thing is clear is how uncomfortable we can be if we know that we are creating those, what you explained, and we have to include, or we have to be, or we have to integrate, or we have to integrate ourselves to another culture or way of thinking or another person. Even myself as Innu Québécoise, when I was sitting with the Atikamekw, I had that insecure, do I do it right? Do I approach? It's probably a mix of something natural, but also how a system wanted to create one nation, one culture. You're this and you're that. And today we're exploding, saying, no, c'est pas possible. Yeah. We have that diversity and that differences that we should celebrate, instead forcing me to go inside a square when I'm a circle, or can we just be the two of us? So I have that nerve, that feeling sometimes. Do I do it right? So probably it's coming from what you mentioned.
Yeah, I love the energy. You just brought such energy. When I just felt like it's the shaking. It's shaking it's stopping the train and shaking I want to say shaking the train. Your energy in this moment of like that, but there's this difference and this rising up of laying claim to really meaningful equality, just as Cindy Blackstock has been advocating for. Like every child matters. Every child needs a house and clean water and loving parents and loving community and land and education. I mean, that is at the heart. And we need to celebrate and be the beautiful array of differences for the richness and the innovation and the creativity, and your energy with which you just described that was so powerful. Like that's the power and energy of difference.
Probably. I don't know. Maybe.
Yeah, I love it. So it's interesting because you and I were going to chat a while back, and I'm so glad for the timing of this conversation, because we are almost to the day on the second anniversary of the final report of the Missing and Murdered Indigenous Women and Girls Inquiry, of which you were a commissioner. And I would love to just hear you speak sort of from this perspective, looking back. What was your greatest learning during that time?
I'm not afraid. I'm not insecure anymore when I go to a place. The insecurity, normal, yes, but is it my little white hair on my side? Is it now I have to wear glasses? Is it because I'm almost 50? All that together? If I wouldn't be part of this journey, I would feel insecure when I have to go meet the government or a group or an entity, institution to advocate. There's always that little of insecurity inside of my belly and spirit. And with this journey, this experience, just being silent in the room or just be at the front, no matter where I am, now I know. The best school of life was given to Canada and to me during those 33 months, 7 days a week, nonstop. It didn't, we never stopped. And that is a gift. Among the gift also are the learning was that many of the family, I was able to receive so much teaching from them, to hug them even we didn't know each other, and to cry with them or to be mad with them or to be uncomfortable. We're human beings. Or to be a challenge from them, to be also, or to be it was an everyday surprise thing, or it was a but we start and we know we're gonna do it. No, it was accepting that I give myself to them every day. The toughest learning also was, how can I make sure that it's not a job for me? It is a way of putting their voice for so many of them that never spoke before to a level or a place or a space that will educate Canada, the government across Canada, and a way for healing. The learning also was, and still today, I cry. I still cry. I cried this morning during an exchange with some student, or I cry yesterday because with the OPP or the provincial government of Ontario, because I will die one day, like all of us, we leave one day with some answer that I'm not allowed to share. Like, because it's the mandate of a commissioner. Oh, knowing that was tough. So it was a learning, and still today learning way of how can I put this responsibility to an institution that is capable to give the truth because it's legal, let's say, or it's ethic, or it's etc. So this is where, for me, I think few example of learning that inquiry brought to me. And to the rest of Canada, I think soon the learning is that we put so many lenses of human rights, indigenous rights, international rights, or safety, justice, culture, and health rights. They're so thick, those lenses, that I know that being a tool for the voices of thousands of people, now it's legal imperative. So my teaching or my learning is that one story is strong, thousands of story are, of course, strong. But what I understand also is the women asked for that, the women had it, and now the women is making history. The Indigenous families and survivors, I'm still digesting, or I'm still this teaching.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. It's big. It's huge.
It's so big.
Right. It doesn't save a life to a person, this inquiry, or it doesn't bring back the daughter. That was tough. Knowing that what we do will not help or bring the answer right away. That's another learning of how you cope with this. that's a tough one.
And yet you were able to sustain a nonstop pace for 33 months and not consider it a job. You know, I'm just taking that in, what that asked or invited of you. And how did you care and nurture yourself so that you could bring, you did this beautiful gesture of your hands out, this beautiful gesture of just, I don't know, it might be the wrong word, servant leadership, it might not be the right, but it's this very profound, you're bringing your gift of who you are.
Process, I don't know. It's during the inquiry, knowing that I don't think I'll get called again not to be a commissioner, but the traditional profile of what is a commissioner is usually a person with a legal background. Usually, I don't say it's automatic, but I was surrounded by commissioners who all had law degrees. One was a former judge, and the other one was lawyer. And then me. I barely finished university, but I don't know. I have an experience or a lived experience, or I have something. It was for me a place where I had no choice to set the ground where I'll get the expertise, the knowledge, and the grandmothers and the family members. So I was surrounding myself or me around them to make sure that journey will be me with them and them with me. Mm-hmm. So I have all the expertise. Mm. And when it was tough, because it triggers also some of my ghost or my past, they knew. They brought me outside or behind or somewhere else to medicine me. Mm. So there's many, many ways that it was bringing also the staff that was land from a department to work at the National Inquiry, or people that apply and left their job to come with us. Come with me downtown East Side. Come with me in North Winnipeg, or come with me in Montreal. Come with me in that community. We'll go with the grassroots organization to meet the people that we work for and why we're doing this work. And each time I had a group of staff coming with me. Sometimes we were just 2 or 3. It didn't matter. But still, for me, it was important that I go and see when the inquiry is over, we go back to where we used to be, or we'll look for another job. But many of us will still seek for answer and justice. Mm-hmm. And this is why we do this. It's for the people that have maybe not the same privilege that we have. Yeah. So the laughing, the ceremony, the love was helping me to make sure that even sometimes I wanted to slam the door and run away. They were telling me, Michèle, you have that privilege to go somewhere else, not us. Mm-hmm. And I was like, you're so right. The house here burned, the entire house, our house burned during the inquiry. Me and Serge lost the home that we bought together. I was devastated. I was with family members. And they said, you're allowed to be mad and shocked and traumatized and sad, but you have insurance that will help you to rebuild something new, something like you wish to see probably. But they never said to me, we lost a loved one. They didn't say that. They were so kind to me. And me, I was listening like, Michèle, yeah, it's just the house. I'm allowed to be traumatized, but they're giving me lesson of life when their sister never came back, or mom or daughter. So I said, okay, my healing process will be fast.
I love that.
Mm.
And it reminds me, I love that you said love and generosity.
What? Reciprocity.
Reciprocity.
What?
Yeah, that comes out of a willingness to accompany one another.
Mm.
And that it's not just one-sided.
What? Yes.
Which, going back to the idea of divide, feels like it's been so central for you, this deep commitment to accompany and to listen and to receive. It's not just one way. It's
Right.
our ability as leaders to receive and be humble in order to continue the work.
Mm-hmm. Right. And when we receive, when we give, it's easy. It's to receive that it's tough.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you, or you're beautiful, or you too, or I love you, or you too, me too. So I'm learning for the past 10 years or maybe more to, okay, thank you, and say nothing.
Yeah.
And I have since 2006, when I receive, or 9, I would say, because it's more when Messenger arrived in my life and Facebook. Well, from stranger, will say, hey, merci, 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 thank you. So it's to tell the stranger or the friend, wow, I'll keep this close to my heart.
Mm-hmm.
I tend to say something good, but I was taught by some cute elders, enough, just take it. Okay.
Oh, that's great. Hard for women. It's hard for women and hard for women leaders. But it seems like, I mean, so many people that I work with is, that question of how do you sustain yourself long term in the giving, particularly when there's we often have our own trauma. We also are in this slow pace of change.
Right.
That to be able to receive is part of our ability to sustain the journey.
Mm. Right.
So tell me, what qualities of leadership do you feel we need now in the world? Like, what qualities should we be growing inside ourselves in order to reconcile and to meet the calls of justice?
With a little bit of a sense of humor, I would say, let's remove from our collective dictionary. Okay, I pretend we have one. It's gonna end on the shell. That expression.
Yeah.
Each time we do an inquiry, no matter which subject, and we always say, it's gonna end on a shell.
Mm-hmm.
We have to stop to say that.
Yeah.
What? And a good leader, there's many ways of making a difference and being a leader in the community. There's many difference of. As soon we remove that and say, oh, how can I honor and give life to those calls for justice? Me as a human being, me in my family and environment, my commitment to this organization or to this movement, or including my work. Where do I work and what do I do? I'm pretty sure there's few calls there that I could bring to our strategic planning exercise and say, why don't we abide to those one and say annually, every year, this is what we did. This is how we improve.
Mm-hmm.
If somebody writes to me in a year after this podcast and say, hey, Michèle, I took 15 of those and it's in our organization or a declaration or a statement, and here the result, oh my God, it's going to be a gift.
Mm-hmm. I love that. And that felt life-giving, because when we can ask the question, how can I bring life? How can I bring life to this? It's an invitation.
Oui.
Yes. it doesn't feel so heavy. Like, okay, we need to hammer these
Yes.
196 recommendations in 17 themes. You know, it can feel so heavy. And yet, if you just simply, it's like living the question, how can I enliven, how can I be a contributor to reconciliation, you know, in the next couple of months? What can I do with my family? It's such a simple, and yet it requires us to be vulnerable and to take small risks that bring up that little bit of like, am I going to do this right? Am I going to be honoring in my actions?
Mm.
So hopefully from this conversation, we'll have some folks write in either to me or to you to say, from this conversation, here's what they feel called to explore.
I wish they do.
So if you're listening right now, please, just one thing that you feel called to do and share that with others is such a powerful small move. So I'd love to end, I know we're wrapping up our time here. What are you dreaming of? What dreams are guiding you right now in your life and work?
Today, my dream is like my mom and many other leaders during those days, that we have our own schools, colleges, and university. And we have the only one college here in Quebec, UNA. And I'm anxious, impatient of why we don't have a university like the one in Saskatchewan or Yukon, Indigenous university.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And I know I'm like a moose head, hard head. We're going to get it.
Yeah.
We will.
I have no doubt if you're on the train, the train will stop and
you'll be with me on that train.
I'll be there. And you'll be breaking open breaking open the doors, and it's possible because you're a bridge builder and you bring such a dynamic energy and trust that the reclamation, the reconnaître, the connaître, finding new ways of knowing and being together has to be rooted in this essential dignity and full expression of Indigenous culture and language, and with deep honoring, but moving forward into the future where, we can bridge no matter what divide, both outside and inside ourselves.
Merci.
Thank you, Michèle.
Merci. I would hug you right now.
I know, sending you a big hug. It is a real honor and so nourishing for me to be in your company, and to thank you for offering your learnings in such for me, I don't know very many people have gone through such deep professional stretching like you have over the last few years, and for your ongoing gift and commitment.
Merci.
So, thank you.